presenting this edition of In Focus, a program which we get for you every day, wherein we discuss one aspect of the economy, one aspect which would help in the country achieving Atmanirbharta or self-reliance. And today we will be talking of the prospects of the Indian space sector. India's journey in space began in 1962, just after 15 years after gaining independence, and in the time since then, the country's space agency, the Indian Space Research Organization ISRO, has achieved feats uncommon among nations, including developing 2 indigenous launch systems and building satellite constellations for a variety of applications, and it has come a long way since then. The current global economy for space is pegged at around $360 billion US, and the Indian space economy is valued at more than $7 billion US, which is around 2% of the global space economy. Also, the Indian space sector needs to grow at around 48% over the coming years to reach the target of $50 billion US. What is the prospect of this sector and how far can it help in achieving Atmanirbharta or self-reliance for the country? We'll discuss that with guests. We are joined in by Dr. Subbarao Pavuluri, co-chair, FICCI Space Committee and CMD. And he's also the CMD of Anand Technologies. We are also joined in by Mr. Yashas Karanam. He is COO Bellatrix Aerospace. And we're joined in by Professor Satya Chakravarti, Aerospace Engineering, IIT Madras, and co-founder Agnikul Cosmos. We welcome all of you to the show this afternoon. Dr. Rao, to begin with, I would want you to tell us from, ever since the foray of the country in space began, after 15 years after independence to this day, when we are using space technology for ease of living, for doing our day-to-day work, how far have we come and what is the size of India's space economy today?
Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir.
See, I think we should consider the 2 aspects of the space program. Indian space program has both on the communication side and the other one is on the Earth observation systems. On the communication side, India made tremendous progress over a period of time, and thanks to ISRO, that ISRO built very many satellites that can communicate, that can be used for communications throughout the nook and corner of the country. And the other aspect of that is, building of the satellite for the Earth observation systems. And Earth observation systems are most important for a country like us to develop the country using a lot of information that can be generated on the natural resources, on the infrastructure area, and on to very many sectors that related to the development activity in this country. And now, as you mentioned now, the space economy globally about $350, $360 billion of that. I understand that, in fact, this has grown to $440 billion during the pandemic, COVID pandemic, because that's the kind of utilization that's happening using the satellites for their communications related activities. And now, India built tremendous amount of satellites activity in the observation system over a period of time for the natural resources management. Under these natural resources management systems, even 1% of the activity from the satellite is being used into the development activity. That is going to create a tremendous input into the development phenomena itself in this country. So in this regard, already the mission projects were conducted by ISRO earlier. There are all the preceptors for the further growth in this country. It can be natural resource management, it can be forest management, it can be related to infrastructure related activities, it can be very many areas. And now, India getting into the global economy, in the digital economy too, then a lot of inputs that can come from the satellite related activities in this country. And that is a tremendous growth. And as you mentioned, it's going to be at least $50 billion worth of that. When you from 2% to 10% when you grow, that's going to be $50 billion. And this economy, the space economy, is going to be a part of the Prime Minister's vision of $5 trillion economy in this country. There's going to be tremendous growth in the years to come, and particularly after liberalization happened in the sector from the government of India. With this, a lot of private sector companies can participate into that enable the ease of living for the people, for the common man, both in terms of getting the bandwidth for the activities, for the digital economy and activities, and also inputs for the development from the Earth observation satellites. Thank you.
All right, from here I'll bring in Mr. Karanam. Mr. Karanam, what is your evaluation of private participation when ISRO lets its facilities, and the access to its facilities to the private companies? How crucial is that for further enhancement of the sector?
See, definitely, I think the way forward is that a lot of private companies have to come, right? ISRO
Yes.
has, I think, silently from the last 50 years and now recently it has made a very big noise in the international community and said that India is capable of doing high-tech space projects with a lot of frugality at cost that other countries cannot really imagine about. So we really have to look at it as probably an opportunity for India to grow and make it really big, because one organization, if one organization which was like funded at maybe 1/10 or 1/20th of some of the bigger organizations like NASA or the European Space Agency could do so much and bring so much credibility to the country, and also bring in a lot of Atmanirbharta that India is now able to make a lot of things in space indigenously, then you can imagine the potential of maybe 500 such companies which are now coming up and taking private investment, maybe at times even getting foreign companies or foreign funds to come and invest in India and drive in that foreign investment and create more employment. That is going to be phenomenal for the country, and that is something we would all, on behalf of the industry, be significantly thankful to the current government and the current chairman of ISRO to make that a main agenda, and also help companies like us get a equal opportunity. And I think recently you had also covered something on the space policy that has come up and how the government and the ISRO are opening up the space economy, helping companies like us to work with ISRO and access ISRO's facilities, have access to some of their expertise and facilities. That is going to really help us build upon what we already have. So there will be two parts. One part is where we built on our own capabilities, and we have the engineers and we build the tech. But that is not enough. We need the vitamin M, right? So we need a lot of money for industry like space industry to test all these systems, test them to the level that they work in space. Because any hardware going to space is very tough and complicated, and you won't have probably a chance where you can send a mechanic to space and repair a 800 crore satellite. So you need to achieve that kind of thing. So we use ISRO's help and get there. So going forward, we see maybe like several lakhs of jobs created in India. These are not going to be just jobs. These are going to be high-tech jobs, because we are generating so many engineers and we can't ask them to work on non-technical areas. So this is the way forward. I strongly believe that.
All right, I'll take that forward to Professor Satya. Professor Satya, having been associated with IIT Madras and co-founder of Agnikul Cosmos. Now, Skyroot Aerospace and Agnikul Cosmos are, developing launch systems independent of ISRO. How important is the aspect of, say, funding here for private companies? Now, ISRO will have the back of, the Indian administration, given the National Space Research Organization it is at a national level. But at the same time, how tough or how easy is it for private companies to flourish in this sector? Because the Indian venture capital for space companies is somewhat limited. Added to that, also, the new companies, if they want, they can, if they are facing shortage of funding, then they either look to companies who are not that much into space exploration, or to the foreign players. So, having said that, how important is this aspect of funding for private companies to flourish, alongside the National Space Research Organization, that is ISRO?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the program and asking a very important question. The role of funding cannot obviously be overstated at all, right? So we need to have funding for pretty much anything that we do. From that perspective, I think the considerations here for someone like ISRO versus someone like a private player is somewhat different here. So even if you're actually ISRO, right, it is not so easy to actually get the funding that you want. Because you need to justify this all the way up to the Prime Minister's office, and because they're actually dealing with public money, there must be a very, very good case for how this is going to be of public utility and so on. It is not as if like money is available to ISRO just like that. They need to prepare a huge case for it, right? That said, they can actually think about doing things at a fairly larger scale than what we are attempting to at Agnikul or even Skyroot. So if you look at Skyroot, for example, they are looking at launch vehicles that can take them from somewhere between 300 to 700 kgs of payload, whereas Agnikul is actually targeting even a smaller segment than that, which is capping at around 100 kgs of payload or so. And these are essentially based on market studies that are available around the world, targeting global customers. So here what we are essentially doing, as Yashas Karanam was mentioning, is we are trying to augment ISRO's capability in terms of bringing in commercial value to the Indian space sector by tapping into a lot of foreign markets which will want to launch satellites. That has been happening with ISRO. We are essentially allowing for the bandwidth of ISRO to actually loosen up over a larger variety of satellites and a wide satellite payload class range that we can, as well as Skyroot and other Bellatrix, they can actually augment. Right. And similarly, again, as you touched upon launch vehicles because we belong to that category, but as Mr. Subara was also pointing out, this also holds good for the satellites themselves, which can configure multiple different payloads for different customers from around the world, because we can offer a very good bang for the buck, if you will, from developing this in India with the kind of expertise that we have in India. Where we can do not only it's not exactly like a cheap labor kind of thing. It is actually very, very good technical capability that we can offer that is at par with or even better than what's there in the world, thanks to a lot of developments that are happening around in things like 3D printing or electrification and IoT and so on, where we can do just as well or even better than other people, but at a much lower cost. So this advantage is something that we are trying to make use of for developing things out of India for the world. And that's exactly the mantra. So it is essentially the funding that we will actually want to tap into being purely a private play is based on what is the market that we are able to show from doing things out of India, the cost advantage, the technical edge that we have, all of those things. So if we find like a very good business case for this, we should be able to attract private funding for ourselves to do things at a scale that's affordable to begin with, and then grow from there gradually to bigger and bigger scales that even ISRO is doing at the moment. And ISRO will actually grow in its scales further and get into human program, the moon program and the Mars program and so on. So their trajectory is slightly higher than the trajectory that we are following. And it's yet to be seen whether we can actually ramp up to that level of trajectory. I don't see that happening anytime soon in the next few years, at least. But it's all the case for ISRO to actually get its funding from the government is based on public interest, because they are actually looking at taxpayer money, and they are not exactly into the commercialization space as much as social impact. Whereas the case for the funding for the private players is primarily based on a very watertight business case that we can command. So these two are slightly different, and each of it has its own challenges.
All right. From here, I'll go across to Professor Dr. Rao. All right, Dr. Rao, when we talk of the environment which has been changed with regard to exploration or encouraging of space-related exploration, a number of opportunities were announced also by the government. It is encouraging the transfer of technology. Also, it is bringing new sector policies and guidelines, and also, the new policies have been changed. A number of reforms have been introduced in the space sector. So, what is your evaluation of how the times have changed when we talk of space exploration in the country? A momentous decision was taken of allowing private partnership in this sector. So added to that, how far have we come when we talk of providing conducive environment for further prosperity in this sector?
See, the reforms that have been brought into the country now, it's tremendously excited every one of us. When I say every one of us, every entrepreneur in this country, every researcher in this country. Earlier, everything was done by ISRO. The building of the satellites, launching of the satellites, and the bandwidth distribution to the other clients. Everything is done by the ISRO. As now, as the Professor Satya has mentioned, a new ecosystem is now going to be in place, and the new ecosystem is going to encourage a lot of entrepreneurship in this country. ISRO itself has been using about 500 industries in order to serve them, for building of the satellites, for building of the launch vehicles, et cetera, all the kind of things into it. So each one of these 500 industries can grow on their own in order to build the satellites and the launch vehicles for the more on a commercial basis in this country. And India has a tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. That spirit will be unleashed now with this. Now, it's not only, the space is always global in nature. And earlier we have been using it only for India, but all these companies which have been mentioned by all of the startup companies, many other companies, companies like us, which have been working into the space for long years, we have the opportunity to grow internationally too in this opportunity, when the opportunity comes up into it. And I can tell you just one or two examples. In India as such today, I understand that about 50% of the population is still not accessible for the internet. In the rural areas, maybe in the northeastern side, maybe some other areas like that. So now, that is a business opportunity for the companies like all of us. And similarly, India being a very vast country, so where natural resource management becomes the must for us for developing the entire country. So it becomes every square inch of land. Otherwise, every picture of the satellite must be made use of for mapping, analysis, and getting the inputs for the development activity. So this can happen only when the private enterprise further grows. And India has a tremendous entrepreneurship, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to take into them. I'll just draw a few parallels. Let's look at the other infrastructure areas, like other communications area, which was a part of the government earlier, now is liberalized, and you have so much of the, the mobile systems and a lot of other things that have been into place. And similarly, let's look at the infrastructure development, roads, ports, harbors, which was a part of the government. The entire scenario changed after liberalization. I'm sure the same fashion, since the economy is growing and the demand is so much, about 350, 60 billions kind of a thing globally. And India itself is about $50 billion is going to be the economy. It's going to have a tremendous opportunity, and it will create tremendous opportunity for the employment and the national growth.
All
That's
right.
the opportunity. The entire industry is going to be co-traveler, as the policy clearly is mentioned. Thank you.
All right, so you're talking of how this will further generate employment and it will bring in more prosperity for the country. We'll take that forward, but at present we're heading for a short break. You're watching In Focus, and today in the program we're discussing the Indian space sector. Stay with us, we'll be back after a short while.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind. Zari India. Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
माँ हिंदी हस्ती
Hum Hindiani.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in all Southeast Asian countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT-17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT-10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching In Focus, and today in the program we're discussing the Indian space sector. And to talk more about it, we're joined in by guests. We are getting inputs from Dr. Subbarao Pavuluri. He's co-chair FICCI Space Committee, and we're also joined in by Mr. Yashas Karnam, COO Bellatrix Aerospace, and we're joined in by Professor Satya Chakravarti, Aerospace Engineering, IIT Madras, and also co-founder Agni Cool Cosmos. Before heading for the break, we were talking of how it would further help in employment generation and also further prosperity for the country. Mr. Karnam, space technologies are now being used for day-to-day activities. They are, they're used for basically ease of living, from agriculture to different domains, not only for the government but for a common man. The life is being made easy through space technology. Elaborate more on the trends and perspectives on upstream and downstream sectors of the Indian space industry, please.
So I think, as you were saying, there are two parts to it. One is the upstream things and the downstream things. So when I say upstream, what it actually refers to is the entire science and technology that goes behind building rockets, building satellites, setting up ground stations in remote locations that are going to help you monitor the satellites, take all the data from satellites. So that entire infrastructure is called upstream. And the other part, which is even more important, is called downstream, which is how you use this data. So you might have some of the best satellites out there in orbit. And if you can't get the data, and maybe if nobody is working on using the data and putting a lot of inference from that, and putting it actually to use, maybe try to analyze soil patterns, try to analyze flood conditions and these kinds of things. So no matter what kind of satellite you have, you can't make good use of it. So both of them are very important and useful for that matter. Bellatrix and all the other companies that are currently in the panel right now, we are all looking at upstream services where we help build these infrastructures. And the downstream is mainly a game of lot of financial things, especially how do you play around, make it cost efficient, and a lot of software. So you get maybe satellite images. These companies have to build their own algorithms and look at ways in which they can make meaningful sense of it. So this is where I think India should really target, because we are now a software hub. So a lot of software companies and startups can try to look at downstream applications and looking at making meaningful sense out of satellite data. Now coming to the kind of applications, to answer the other part of the question. So you can imagine maybe there is a flood or something like that that happens and a crop gets destroyed. So currently now farmers go to the insurance agencies who have given insurance of this. How do you survey vast stretches of land? Maybe there are several hundreds of acres of agricultural land, and farmers come back and say they have been affected and they need to claim the insurance. So earlier it was a very tricky process where there were a lot of loopholes in which either farmers were getting cheated or things like that. Maybe sometimes even insurance agencies found it very hard to look into such data and give them the required compensation. And sometimes it was also taking a lot of time because somebody had to physically go to that place and inspect it. And many a times by the time such inspections would have happened, a lot of things would have changed in the area. So you need real-time data of the survey of the land during the time of such calamities. So if satellite data can give you like high resolution data and also meaningful inference, say you have got certain different types of satellites. Some satellites generate optical images. Some satellites generate IR images, some of them generate synthetic aperture radar images, some of them generate something we call as hyperspectral images. Using all this, you get different elements of data of the affected area. And with that, with no time, the insurance companies can just get a view of that entire area and see how it is affected sitting at their office. So in a way, it is kind of helping fast track things. It will be more accurate and foolproof. That is one example. And say the government wants to plan infrastructure, look at constructing highways. There will be vast stretches of land, maybe 500, 600 kilometers. You can't wait for somebody to go and audit the entire land and then come back, make the report. It's a lot of time. So for planning purposes, if satellites can give you that data and instantly you look at those satellite images, real-time images, and make your planning, it's going to fast track things. And then nowadays, with the increasing resolution and capabilities of satellites, it can even be looked at maybe from all infrastructure development perspective, keep a track of how things are going, and also crime rates and things like that. As and when satellite technology advances even further and you get even high resolution images, right? So now you can get sub-meter resolutions. So what we call is when you go to the highest resolution, you can make out things and differentiate between two objects which are like less than a meter apart, maybe even like 300 centimeter, 400 centimeter apart. So that is the kind of data you are getting from space. So you can imagine a lot of things for India can happen with that. And the other, this is all on the imaging side. Now you can imagine the work from home scenario that the entire world is going through, right? So if I want to sit in some very remote village and I want to make that my office, a lot of stress is going on the existing network capacities on the data. So I need to have that kind of infrastructure in space to make it more seamless. So now what might loading a page, if it takes maybe like 30 seconds or 1 minute, with better connectivity, you can imagine sitting in a rural office, you can be working as if you're going between folders instantaneously, as if you're sitting in office and there is no time lag. It happens in microseconds. So such kind of capacities come in and it makes life easier for us. So a lot of these kinds of things are bound to open up in the next 5 to 10 years. We will all look into that.
All right. Yes, indeed. From here, Professor Satya, President Kalam had talked of igniting the minds of children, you know, for further prosperity of the nation. When we talk of the 1990s, the IT boom was witnessed, and that drove the demand for engineers, technologists, and also business management, which eventually led to more growth in the IT education in the country. Would you say that the government, apart from facilitating, private through policy changes, through allowing private partnership in the space sector, something also more has to be done at the school levels, at the education level, to encourage more students to take up space research, space education, that would further give more, more thrust, or that would further give more teeth to the space sector?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because what is happening today with most of the youngsters is there is a lot of self-learning that's happening through the internet. There is so much online content, what's called as massively open online courses that are being put out by many different universities around the world, not the least of which is the Indian ecosystem itself from the IITs and IISc, based on what's called as NPTEL, the National Program for Technology Enabled Learning, which has the largest course content that's available online. So this is again, and part of it is actually very interestingly in the context of what we're talking about, enabled by the space technology itself, right? So which means that a lot of people are actually learning a lot of things from their homes and beginning to do things by themselves instead of waiting for curriculums to actually be shaped for this and all of that stuff. So in fact, many times the curriculum will probably come behind what the students' interests are as they see students develop satellites or launch vehicles and open up new ways of doing things like 3D printing of rockets and all of that. And from there, the academics will probably synthesize what's actually the most basic thing that's now got very much mainstream crystallized so that they can impart it to the next generation of students coming in and so on. So it's sort of like we see how the technology is growing and how the students are actually picking it up on their own. And then from there, we now say, let's actually formulate, we'll start with things like elective courses that are specialized by specific faculty members who are teaching those for only those that are interested. And then it will further percolate down to core courses where this becomes like mainstream. And then it will further percolate down to the school level and so on. So this takes a little while, but during this time, there is like a huge amount of explosion of information on the internet. And this is also now enabled by access to the internet on the content. in terms of videos, like practical videos, demonstrations, and so on, that is happening there with access by mobile phones, pretty much by smartphones, by pretty much every youth in the country. So this is a game changer. So what we have to see is how this is going to impact education is actually yet to be seen very clearly in the next 5 to 10 years. But what we expect is that the youth of the country will not be waiting for it. They will actually be going forward with whatever they can learn from wherever. So there's a lot of learning that's actually happening outside the classroom. There is a lot of activity that's happening outside the classroom in most engineering colleges, and many engineering colleges enable this. In fact, they have curricula that allow for what's called as free electives, and also trying to credit outside classroom technical development that they are participating in. So you will find many universities and technical institutions having many student projects that are being done as many different groups that are developing, for example, unmanned autonomous rovers, or aerial vehicles, or rockets and satellites, and all kinds of Mars rovers and those kinds of things. Right. So there are several such developments that are happening that's participated upon by students themselves, without with very limited faculty intervention, mostly in the realm of mentoring rather than actually trying to guide them to do this. So it's a very place that we are in today.
All right, all right. So it has already, we can say that the space sector has already caught the fancy and caught the imagination of the students, but that has to be also taken forward. We'll talk more about it, but at present we're heading for a short break. You're watching In Focus. Stay with us, we'll be back in a short while.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Sector exploration in the program, and how far will it help in achieving self-reliance? And to talk more about it, we are getting inputs from our guests. We are joined in by Dr. Subbarao Pavuluri, co-chair FICCI Space Committee and CMD Anand Technologies. We're also joined in by Mr. Yashas Karnam, CEO Bellatrix Aerospace, and Professor Satya Chakravarti, Aerospace Engineering, IIT Madras, and also co-founder Agnikul Cosmos. Dr. Rao, before heading for the break, Mr. Karnam talked specifically about how space technology is benefiting us domestically, be it something as major as, drafting national plans or national policies, national planning, or for that matter, affecting a common person through work from home, environment and scenario. Where are we placed globally? Because talking of self-reliance, talking of Atmanirbharta, the Prime Minister specifically talked of how this does not mean that we are not open to open to say interacting with foreign countries, but that does not mean that we are not we cannot take forward our expertise to foreign countries or take from them as well. Where are we placed globally? Because ISRO has been coming to the has been pursued by international countries as well when we talk of helping them with launching of their own satellites. So where are we globally placed? We've talked of self-reliance, or for that matter, I would want you to explore explain more on the self-reliance aspect of the sector, and also where are we placed globally?
See, when you're talking about the self-reliance and Atmanirbhar Bharat, I must tell you that ISRO from the very beginning, since Vikram Sarabhai days, have been promoting Atmanirbhar only, self-reliance. The goal always has been that what can be done in this country must be done in this country. What cannot be done only to be imported. So that's how the entire space program has nourished over 500 industries all around, and the ecosystem has been already created. And that is the greatest success of the Indian space program. Now, when we're talking about the successes of the same program, we can see that PSLV, for example, so we have success in the PSLV programs on that.
Yes.
That's where hundreds of satellites from the foreign companies also we could launch from Indian soil. That's the greatest thing that happened. And in one go, we can launch over 100 satellites. So that means we have the technology and we have the ability to do that, and everything is going very fine as far as the PSLV is concerned. And the GSLV also another launch vehicle, which already we are building it. We already built Mark 2 and Mark 3. And the Mark 3 is going to be again our horse for launching our communication satellites in future. And the most difficult part in that is building up the cryogenic engine. That cryogenic engine has been successfully built by Indians onto that. It only indicates that technically and technology front we happen to be very, very strong. And now, when you look at the same scenario under the liberal reforms part of it, earlier the government is spending the taxpayers' money for achieving these goals. Now, under the liberalization, these goals are going to be met by the private industry in this country. In other words, the policy has clearly stated that R&D, research and development, only will be done by ISRO. All the commercial activities will be taken care of by the private industry. That's the reason today we have a lot of startup companies in the launch vehicle area and also satellite area come up into that. I strongly believe that the India can emerge as the strongest manufacturing base for the satellites and the launch vehicles in this. And rest of the world talking about thousands of satellites to be launched in the LEO constellations. So if the thousands of satellites to be made, in that naturally the India can become the hub for manufacturing satellites. In every satellite, at least 27 to 30% of is the manpower intervention into it. It's not something can't be done automatically at every stage into it. So therefore, the 30% expertise has to come from the individuals. That expertise we fully have in this country. So that's where the India is going to score. And India can become the manufacturing hub in the high technology areas like satellites and launch vehicle building on that. And when you are talking about, in this different constellations, GEO, LEO, MEO, different constellations that we have it. And India being the vast population, about 160 crore population, and it is necessary that every individual should be reached using the internet. And similarly, every square inch of land has to be mapped and resources to be evaluated by the country. India is a subcontinent. So therefore, that's where the satellites are going to enable a quick development. This is indirectly the development of the nation is going to be quicken the process with so much information available and so much information and empower the individuals in the country, and also the information available for the mapping and other related activities as a part of the development activity itself in that. That's what it's going to be. And as you mentioned some time ago about igniting minds, and each individual now can become Ekalavya. So as the professor has mentioned earlier, and sitting at home, looking at the internet, looking at the Google, whatever, the kind of things, a lot of information is being generated. Content is so huge that's already available. So therefore, it's something like everyone becomes a student by himself, and what is going to be the mentoring, as the professor has mentioned now, a mentoring is going to be done, not necessarily guiding at every stage. Like the classroom concept will go away very soon. The brick and mortar concept will go away very soon into it. And we are going to get into a new era of development. And you can imagine to reach so many villages, lakhs of villages in the country, and to get into the various where one cannot access easily by a road or by a fiber optic network. This satellite communication and this is going to enable us to quicken the process onto that. So that way, I think we see a strong India ahead, fueled with the highest technologies like the satellite technologies in this country. And that is going to be the golden era for future.
All right, a golden era is what we see ahead. I'll take that forward to Mr. Karnam. Mr. Karnam, would you also second that? What would be, in achieving this golden era for the country, what do you see the challenges ahead that have to be ironed out?
I would definitely second that thought. In fact, everybody in the space industry, we are all working towards that goal to make that a reality. And we really want to complement ISRO in whatever small way we can. ISRO is already doing a lot of significant things. So wherever we can help ISRO and maybe also independently do something for the country, that is our focus. But going forward, I think in terms of challenges, there are quite a few of them, because if you look at other countries, like maybe the United States or the countries in Europe, for that matter. So the privatization had started several decades ago. So there were all these big companies like Airbus, Boeing, Thales, Northrop, and all these companies have been working on the space sector. And they've been working hand in hand with the industries for a lot of time. And even in India, if you draw narratives, even companies like Anant here, and there are also a lot of other companies which have been working with ISRO, but the kind of engagement that India had with the private companies and the NASA, for example, had with the foreign companies was quite different, mainly because of several factors. Those countries are they are much older democracies, and they were financially much stronger. Because of all that, even private companies could invest on those kinds of facilities and build their own products, build their own infrastructure. But now we are not really very far behind, and I think over the years the private companies have come in such a great speed, and they have mastered such proficiency required to send something to space. Despite all that, the challenge that I see is simply that we need a lot of push and enablement from the government side also, maybe from ISRO side also, in handholding, helping us build these things for the first time for space, right? So anything you build to space, as I was mentioning earlier, nothing can go wrong. So because of that, you need to have very strong, rigorous methodologies, quality control measures. So India should be known for a country not just making something for cheap, but also making quality stuff at that price, right? That should be the message that we send out to the global community. For us to get that kind of quality and ensure that every hardware we send out to space, we really need help of agencies like ISRO, both in terms of facilities and maybe in terms of sharing their experience. So what you get out of experience is that when you start a project, you know what will go wrong in that project, or what will fail in space. So that kind of gyan or information is really the treasure that we all wish to get from ISRO. And apart from that, in terms of the universities and the talent that is available in the country, say, for example, you want to now start a company and say independently you want to build something for space, you want to build your own satellites. Where do you get talent for that? Currently in the country, at the most, we have some universities which are working on nano satellites or CubeSats. And a lot of subsystems and components of that are also imported for that matter, right? So how do we bring in that Atmanirbharta? So you need a lot of hard work that needs to come in from the industry side as well. So some support from ISRO, a lot of hard work from the industry where visit, probably burn in a lot of cash and then reiterate 100 times and get that kind of perfection. So it's a process, it's inevitable. I think we all have to do this together. That is what I wish to say.
All right, we'll all have to do this together. Professor Satya, how important is to retain the brain drain, in this sector? We're talking of how what is happening here today happened many decades ago in more developed countries abroad, and that has led to their expertise, their supremacy. So how important is this aspect of retaining brain drain and ensuring that it turns into brain gain for the country in this sector? How big is this a challenge? And also I would want you to speak more about the road ahead in the sector. Sir, I would request you to unmute your device first, please.
Sorry.
Yes.
So that's a two-part question, one about the brain drain, the other one is the road ahead. Let's look at the first question first. It's an interesting situation that we are in. So if we were to actually say, for example, the IITs were the ones that actually led the brain drain, and then the rest of the other college students followed it. I'm seeing that there's kind of like a reversal happening with most of the IITians actually staying back, but not necessarily pursuing technological challenges, but spreading themselves into the financial sector or other fintech or let's say internet-based startups, SaaS, those kinds of things, and the rest of the rest of the colleges actually are still sending probably more students abroad than the IITs are doing now. So that has to actually turn around. And I think the rest of the students will begin to see the value that IITians are creating in these different sectors, and for which we will probably want not only the IITians but also other students to deep dive into technological pursuits. And that I think is today possible more with startups when compared to what it used to be before. So the moment we are able to actually create value in terms of commercialization, commercial value, you will find that people are actually wanting to jump into this, because I know for a fact that there are so many students who always want to actually take up a core job, but they don't really get a very exciting situation or a position in which they can actually pursue the core job. So the proliferation of a lot of these space tech companies around in India can help retain this talent much more than what it used to be. The path for that's going to happen is we will start with like small rockets and small satellites and grow up. So as we are seeing this particular market, you can still see a lot of money coming in. There is a commercial value just about this, let's say in the small satellites, microsatellites, nanosatellite space. And the moment we actually see this happen and we are able to grow, then we can actually do some grandiose things like what we have seen NASA do, and therefore attract a lot of talent from here and so on. Those days are gone. So we are now actually going to rewrite this in a different way by doing like 3D printed rockets that can take small satellites to space very quickly, and have constellations of small satellites instead of like one large satellite that governments and big companies used to put. So that those days are like 20th century. The 21st century is going to be a lot more nimble, and that's going to spawn a lot of companies that can absorb this talent in the country. So I expect that the brain drain will actually get arrested. We can clearly see those trends happen already, right? That is the first part. The second, which is nice, because commercialization is what leads to arresting the brain drain. That is a summary.
Yes.
So now going forward, the plot is actually thickening in the deep space area, right? So the first thing that I'm actually beginning to sense is militarization of space, and that's right. This is number one. Second one is commercialization of space, like for example, colonizing the moon and trying to mine ore from there and all of that stuff. So we have an international space treaty that all the countries are signatories to, which actually actively prohibits these. But we also see urges from different countries which are trying to poach into this, right? Yes. So the next few years to a decade is actually going to be very interesting for us to watch this scenario unfold, where it's always good to be very utopian and altruistic and say space is for the entire humanity. But the people who are actually going there first are the ones who are actually going to plant their flag and then start claiming credit and space and territory and all that. This is how humanity has always grown. So it's not like 21st century has suddenly made us angels. right? So let's be very pragmatic about this. So the people who are actually going there first are the ones who are actually going to be able to plant the flag, right?
Yes.
So it's very important for us to actually keep our eyes open to militarization and commercial exploitation of space assets in a way that is currently not thought about, but we are seeing urges from different countries and companies to pursue this. And we should be right there in the forefront to be able to exploit that situation when that arises and not be caught napping about it, thinking very naively, oh, that was not supposed to happen, how could that happen? Sorry, that's not how the world works, right? So we got to be very pragmatic there.
All right, on that thought, we'll end this discussion here. The golden era is what we're looking at, but also we have to be cautious, and we should not be caught napping to ensure that prosperity continues to usher in this sector. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us with your insights this afternoon on In Focus. So here we had insights coming in from our guests who talked of how promising is the space sector in today's time, how it has caught the fancy and imagination of a younger generation, but also this talent has to be further tapped, and also how the policy change and how the intervention by the government has helped in ensuring that the space technology is further used in our day-to-day lives to enhance and to bring in ease of living. But also that has to be also taken forward, and that would eventually lead to self-reliance and Atmanirbharta for the country. With that, we end this edition of In Focus here. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
As the day unfolds,